Good morning and welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin. Sean Spicer, Dan Turrentine, and I are here to take you through the day, just like the pros do at your CNNs, your NBCs, your New York Times, the morning meeting. Major news organizations gather their bureaus from around the globe, give you a schedule for the day, offer some analysis, insight, maybe a little back and forth. And then the surprise twist on the two-way platform, we take your questions. Always in the spirit of peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace. Today, we want three new people. If you've never raised your hand before, we want three new ones today. It's like a telethon. So please, if you've never raised your hand, make today the day you enter the conversation. Lots going on at two-way, which we'll get to. Very exciting event tonight. Tell you about later in the program. But for now, Dan and Sean, welcome. What are you guys
Mark,
doing? What are you doing?
speaking of exciting, and I
Yeah.
don't know if she's on my morning run this morning,
Yeah.
I passed three women, one of whom was telling her friends, and I kid you not, about this new show on Two Way with Meghan McCain you have to watch. I am not kidding.
You stop and say
I
anything?
no, I turned around and said she's great, and I kept going. It was
Yeah.
dark out, so
Is that
That is-
just because you didn't want to be creepy, or because you? I mean,
I wanted to get home and have breakfast. I was hungry.
Okay, fair. Well, this morning I'm walking the dog. I didn't have the jacket on, and a guy comes by with a fellow lab and says, "Looks like you're already ready for the morning meeting."
A guy you knew or didn't know?
I knew he's one of my neighbors.
Last night, I was downtown at the Olive Tree Restaurant, Olive Tree Cafe, where tonight's episode of Table 17 debuts. And the people at the next table, they didn't see me. They were talking about two-way, and they said, Sean and Dan are such good dressers. Why is Mark such a slob? No, that one didn't happen. I am wearing my Teamster sweatshirt.
I like
this is from the Des Moines local, so
Wow.
it's legit. All right, here's what's happening today. Yesterday, we always try to be forward-looking, but Sean, I have to note, yesterday we predicted all three of the president's events would be open. They were all closed, and the big story today is about the economy. I had a day unlike I've had my whole career yesterday. The business community, and I'm talking about people who own donut shops and people who run Fortune 500 companies and people who work on Wall Street. Up until yesterday, they were like, yeah, there's chaos, but we love the tax cuts. We don't love the tariffs, but whatever. Maybe he doesn't mean them. We love the regulatory reform, and we love all the anti-woke stuff. Up until yesterday. And yesterday, through some combination of Donald Trump saying maybe there'll be a recession and the tariffs really going on, I don't know exactly what happened. Yesterday, I was besieged throughout the day by people saying this is a nightmare. And they're not comforted by Bessent. They're not comforted by Hassett. They're not comforted by Lutnick. And they're not comforted by Donald Trump. It was an extraordinary day for me, just in my inbox and on my phone. And the markets reacted accordingly. International markets are not so bad, at least last I checked. But today, the big event of the day, which is open press, is at 5 o'clock when the president speaks to the Business Roundtable. Dan, what is the significance of this organization that probably some people on here have heard of and some not? Who is the Business Roundtable?
So the Business Roundtable is most of the leading kind of Fortune 100, Fortune 250 companies. And what's unique about it is for a lot of trade associations, the head of government relations or the general counsel is the head member, is the point for the company with that trade association. With the BRT, as it is known, it is the CEO. Only CEOs are board members. They gather 3 or 4 times a year. It is tradition that the president goes and addresses them because it really is a who's who of the world, from Wall Street to kind of Main Street companies, and their opinion is not insignificant.
Let me run through the whole schedule. Then, Sean, I want to come back to you and talk to you about the president's day, particularly this speech, which is coming at the end of the day. First, put up the pool so Sean can tell us. Sean, one thing I love about today's pool lineup is Fox gets to be both the main TV camera and then the secondary camera is Fox Business. Anything else catch your eye on there?
Obviously, the American Conservative. This is, I think, their second time as the new media representative.
Yeah. All right. So the president's having lunch with the vice president at 12:30. Then he has nothing on his schedule public until the Business Roundtable speech. I'll be super curious to see who covers it. I'm pretty sure Fox will cover it live. MSNBC and CNN should take it live. We're in the midst of a huge economic situation. The President of the United States is speaking to the Business Roundtable. On the merits of news, they should take it live.
Definitely take it. Though, by the way, I will just say, in a bit of blatant hypocrisy, Caitlin Collins reporting from the White House lawn yesterday. I get we predicted it because past his prologue about how often you see the president, but them somehow decrying the fact that we, quote, haven't seen the president all day publicly. And I'm like, you didn't see the last guy for 4 years and you never did a piece. You don't see this guy for 4 minutes and you suddenly, that's breaking news. Give me a break.
Well, I'd say don't grade him on the curve if you're gonna compare him to Biden, and of course, but he did pass up the opportunity yesterday to reassure markets. He left it to his lieutenants.
But and it's the inverse. When you did hear from Biden, it was news. When you don't hear from Trump, it's news.
Right. All right. There is a White House briefing at 1 o'clock today, and the press secretary has gotten high marks from many, including from me, for her competence. Today's going to be a tough test, and I wonder if she comes alone, or I wonder if she brings someone. One of the things that happened yesterday, as I said, the markets and people talking to me, they are not reassured by the major 3 big economic spokespeople. And so people are saying, like, those guys need to be able to calm the horses, or Trump does.
Well, the problem is that it's not a policy that's the problem, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
When you listen to the people, it's the uncertainty where they're saying, tell us there's going to be tariffs or not tariffs.
But they're creating the uncertainty.
Exactly.
Hold on. I'm calling a timeout. Let me get through the schedule. Come right back to this conversation. J.D. Vance is going to the House Republican Conference meeting today to continue to try to whip votes to make sure there's not a shutdown. And of course, looming over all the other things, the uncertainty on tariffs and everything else, is the prospect of a shutdown. I don't think it's going to happen, although I'm less sure understanding than you guys are from yesterday about which Democratic senators are going to vote for it if the House passes the bill. In Ukraine, talks underway. Here's the photo op with Rubio, Waltz, and the Ukrainian delegation, and some Saudi mood music. Please roll that. Wrong one.
Mr. Yermak, what do you hope to accomplish today?
Advisor Waltz, we expect weapons to be turned back on.
Are you hoping to get a ceasefire?
Secretary Rubio, are you open to a partial ceasefire? Secretary Rubio, Sky News. Do you think you'll get a ceasefire?
I mostly just like the Saudi Wranglers. Like, they just keep appearing more and more. Like,
amazing how everybody on the Ukrainian side knew how to wear a suit.
Exactly. They're like Furbies or Tribbles. They just kept multiplying more and more Saudi Wranglers. I didn't see Witkoff in the shot. I don't know if he went to the other negotiations with the Israelis and Hamas. But also, it's now being reported that he's going to Moscow later this week to meet with Putin. He went to Moscow previously to bring home the American hostage, but now detainee. But now he's gone back to meet with Putin. Seems like a big deal to me. It's election day today, folks, in Greenland. Now, I'm bad at time conversion, but I believe the polls close at 6 Eastern. I don't know if they do exit polls in Greenland, but hopefully by tomorrow we'll know.
57,000 people in the whole country. I don't know that you have to do an exit poll. You just have to count the votes.
Just count the votes. All right.
Well, the exit poll is the poll. Yeah.
That's fair. All right. Let me run through some other elements real quick here. Here is a poll, 101, please. This is an Emerson poll about the president and his job approval on various topics. And a lot of them are interesting. Immigration, he's in the black. Balancing the budget, he's in the black. I don't know why. U.S.-Mexico in the red. Russia, Ukraine in the red. Israel, Hamas in the red. Economy, deeply in the red. 37 approve, 48 disapprove. Here's something else from that poll, please. 102, more on the economy. 53% think increasing tariffs will hurt the economy. Only 37 say it will help. 46% say his policies are making the economy worse. Only 28 think they're making his policies better. Not so great. All right, lastly, here's Elon Musk on entitlements yesterday, talking to Kudlow. The left has interpreted this as a clarion call that Musk and Trump plan to eliminate Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. But listen to this, please. 105.
The waste report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. So that's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $600-700 billion a year.
So that's like what Medicaid costs. So Sean, let's just start with the Musk thing because this hangs over everything is how they're defining what they're doing. And again, what markets are concerned about, what business people are concerned about is putting on tariffs and cutting government payrolls is a recipe for stagflation in the view of some. So what is Musk saying there? Because Donald Trump's made it clear he's not cutting entitlements. It seems to me he's saying, well, we need to eliminate his waste, fraud, and abuse in all the entitlement programs. But how do you interpret Musk? And then more broadly, how is the White House going to get out of the pickle they're in?
So first of all, I will say, like, that's not helpful when you're not clear on issues like that, because you are handing the other side, right or wrong. I would do the same thing. I would say, well, this is what he's saying. He said, quote, eliminate it all. And we know that President Trump is committed to protecting all those programs. So that's just a non-starter. So one is he could be making his own views known. Two, he could just be inarticulately making the case that they're actually trying to eliminate, inefficiencies, fraud, in waste in Social Security, because he went on to enumerate a bunch of abnormalities in the program. The fact that, like, there's someone who's 137 years old, technically still on the Social Security schedule, et cetera. So if you look at the context it was in, I think that's what he was going for. My guess is that, to your point, Caroline's going to get asked about that specifically today at 1 o'clock. So that's, a cleanup thing. I don't know that you have to do anything more than that. I mean, the Dems are going to do what they do with it. I think you have to be clear as far as what he meant, and go from there, and maybe ask him to be a little clear in the future.
Sean, what about this question of, like, the president is going to wait till 5 p.m. to reassure people on the economy? Is he going to say we're not going to have a recession? Like, what's the messaging way out of the current deep concern? I can't emphasize enough, deep concern that both the policies and the clarity and the consistency is really freaking people out.
So, I think it'll be interesting. You don't lead with a negative. So I think the idea of saying we're not going into recession would be bad messaging.
Maybe he could say the fundamentals of the economy are strong.
I think, what he can do is be a little bit more specific about the plan, about his intention with tariffs, try to add, he's been very clear well before he took office. After the election, that is, and now, and then in the joint address, et cetera, about expecting some turbulence in the economy. If that's the case, the question is how much? And I think that's where people are, this level of disruption, if you actually believe some of the theories that part of what they want to do is really disrupt the economy and shift things, then there will be some turbulence. And I think it's right for the president to do that. The more clarity he can give today, the better, to the business leaders, to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what you can expect. I don't know that that's really his style, but if you're asking me what he could do, it would probably be to give them that certainty that they're looking for.
Right. Well, one thing, just real quick, is he could say, we're going to cut taxes, we're going to roll back regulation, we're going to expand energy, the three pillars that the markets all like, rather than just talking about tariffs and DOGE. Dan.
Yeah, so I want to go back to the Musk thing, which is the problem, I think, and this is going to go into the next topic here, is Musk's explanations were absurd. You didn't play the rest of the clip, but he goes on to say that it's a program that Democrats like because it goes to immigrants who are their voters, and that's why they protect Social Security. I would love the GOP to adopt that talking point and go to the electorate with that message. First off, Trump won Latinos. Secondly, that is just insane. And so it goes to this idea that they're doing this not because they have a plan, that it's rational, and they know what's coming out the other end. It sounds like kind of an ideological jihad with the guy who knows nothing about politics, right? And because, Sean, to your point, Trump has been really clear that they're not going to touch that.
Right.
And where he has kind of gotten near the line is waste, fraud, and abuse. But Musk's explanation was a joke, great for Democrats, but a bad day for Elon Musk and the Republican Party. And it goes to the second part, which is what they're trying to, the reason the markets are hemorrhaging is not because they're detoxing. That is just another kind of absurd talking point. The problem is the markets are digesting what they're doing. And, you can fake it with the electorate in politics, kind of BS your way through. You can't BS the markets, right?
Dan, isn't there an element? I hate to sound like I'm on it at CNBC, but as I understand it, they were a little frothy, right? There was a little bit of overvalued, and so
Of course.
the floor is a little softer than it might otherwise be,
Sure,
right?
but Mark, the problem is that we like to talk about the real lives of real people. This is real money. So
Yeah.
when Trump says we're going to do tariffs, right? Sean, you made the point the other day that they had to say it was over fentanyl because that's kind of like how they got around the law to for him to do this explicitly on his own with executive orders. Well, the market has to kind of say, okay, what could he make up next? We don't really know what Trump is trying to achieve, right? He talks about we need to, get even. We need to have they need to treat us better. Well, the markets, because it's real money, right? Your fiduciary, they're trying to figure out, what does this mean? What is all this government spending? Government cutting? What are they really trying to accomplish? Why is it 8%, not 6% versus 10%? What's going to come out the other end? Do we have confidence that the services that the government provides will still be there? So I think the problem for Trump is he likes the chaos because it keeps the media and his opponents off balance. He likes the fact that he never really fills in the picture because then he can define victory as he sees it politically. The problem is it is the complete opposite of what markets want, which is clarity, stability, and certainty. And so, again, he can put out Jesus Christ as his cabinet member. You can't bullshit the markets. So at some point, they have to fill in this picture or just say, we're going to live with the turbulence and the politics will be what they be.
Flip that off and put it on social media. That was fantastic. It included profanity, but whatever. Sean.
Sorry.
No,
I would just say,
good in a good way.
My media rant of the morning is just to say, I love the fact that during the Biden administration, we redefined what a recession is economically. It used to be 2 successive quarters of negative growth. And when it happened, they said, well, it's not because it's Biden. And now 50 days into Donald Trump, CNN is literally running headlines, we're headed to a recession without not a single quarter of negative economic.
Well, look, it's not a recession.
I would say two things.
But hold on a second, because I recall during the campaign, the Kamala crash, which was a one-day movement that was completely her fault as the vice president with no power. It was all her fault. So,
right, but there's a difference between a politically charged line and using the term.
I would say I declare a moratorium on comparing how Biden was treated to how Trump is treated on stuff like that. It's over. He's no longer president. At least for today.
Veto that.
Okay. But the other thing is, again, Sean, it's not just CNN. The people who were contacting me yesterday who are as MAGA could be, they're very unhappy. And that's
not the same thing. Two things can be true at once. People can be unhappy and CNN can be bad.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying is that what they're saying that this is a problem is a view shared by many who support the president unambiguously. Please raise your hand. We got to get 3 people who've never asked questions before asking questions today, or the show's going to just shut down. So raise your hand if you've never raised your hand before. In the business roundtable, my understanding is there are people there who are going to say, Mr. President, we need stability. We need some clarity here. As Dan said, what are you doing with tariffs? Which ones are actually going on? Because if you put them on and take them off and put them on and take them off and lower them and raise them and lower them and raise them, there's no way for us to make decisions. How will Donald Trump respond to CEOs telling him that?
How they phrase it will matter. If it's you need to do this, that's generally not a very strong hand, to use the current vernacular. I think if they say, we get what you're trying to do, here's what we would appreciate, kind of thing. The problem is that I think the people around Donald Trump, unlike last time, whether it's Kevin Hassett or Lutnick or Bassett, they're on board on this agenda. And you can tell by the comments that they make. So it's a lot harder when you've got, last time when you've got a disparate group of people who are not all aligned in the same way on the policies. It seems like his team this time is backing him up on these policies, and that's a very, very different place to be than where he was the first term.
Mark, one other thing though, because Sean, you guys have said this. Trump is such a positive guy, right? Projects strength at all times, always like, we're going to win, don't worry. I think one of the things that rattled people is it was almost unprecedented for him to admit potential negative, periods. And I think that's partly what freaked him out is that, Trump's like, yeah, we may have some bad periods here. And he never talks like that. So people are like, if he's willing to say that, they must see some data and he's trying to get ahead of it. And that's not something they were thinking was real.
Totally agree. And I blew it off when he said it. It's just like some
we all did.
answer. But all right, let's do 2 other quick topics, then bring people in. And again, folks, I'm serious. 3 new people need to raise your hands or the show's shutting down. Do either of you have any idea what's going on with the Ukraine talks? Anybody have any idea? Does it seem like we're headed towards the deal? I thought we were going to get an announcement yesterday of the minerals deal, but anybody have any idea?
I mean, I feel good about it. There's nothing that wouldn't, at least from the vibes that are coming out, I think it sounds like a positive.
All right. Dan, what politician used the phrase quite regularly? I feel good about it.
Well, given that accent, I'm going to say Bill Clinton.
Yeah, he liked that expression. I feel good about it. All right. There's this guy, Muhammad Kali, Columbia University graduate student. He's married to an American. He's here on a green card, although I've read that he came here illegally. There's this debate about whether the administration can deport him legally, and judge has held over any deportation until tomorrow when there's a hearing at the earliest. I don't know all the facts, and I don't know if they've got a cause to say that he did more than exercise speech, although I bet there are lots of Americans who say if you're here and you're not a citizen, whatever status you have, if you're not a citizen, you can't just say things that the Americans don't like. I think there are people who would agree with that. There are plenty of people who don't. Here's my question. The Democrats, not just the squad, although the squad, the Senate Judiciary Democrats, lots of Democrats have said, we're standing on this ground. This is outrageous and un-American. I believe the only reason to take that position is because you truly believe it on principle. Because I can't imagine that they think the politics are good. Dan, am I wrong? Are the politics of this good for the Democrats? Are they simply acting to their credit on principle?
Well, I think there's 2 issues that you just kind of laid out. There's the politics and the principle of this specific case. Might not be, like, of all the things happening, the best place to pick your, where to plant your flag. But it's part of a bigger pattern that's accelerating that I think is why they're doing this, which is the kind of crackdown on DEI is beginning to venture into a crackdown on free speech, right? There was the whole kerfuffle this weekend about Georgetown Law School and the U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia sending this letter about your DEI programs and then, like, what you're teaching. And, it's a Jesuit institution. They kind of fired back to say, like, we teach all viewpoints. I think Democrats feel like at some point you have to stand up and say, like, enough, right? That if this guy committed a crime, different story. But if all he was doing was protesting, you have a right as an American, green card holder, U.S. citizen, to speak your mind, to protest your government. That is about as fundamentally American as you get. Again, if he committed crimes, if he burned a building, broke a door down, he's going to have less of a leg to stand on. And Mark, to your point, I don't know all the, details of this, and I sure hope Democrats do. But I think they just feel like enough. We need to stand up for what it means to be an American.
Sean.
I will agree with you. I don't know all the facts of this case. I think that's going to make a big determination as to how hard some of us come down on this. But generally speaking, I do think that depending on, and there's some question about, to your point about the status, and that does make a difference. If you're here as a green card holder or a permanent resident, that's very different than some of the other more temporary visas, or as a traveler or what have you. So I think that the details are going to matter in this case. I will attempt to abide by the new rule and just say it is ironic that a group of people on my side of the aisle were canceled because we didn't use someone's pronoun. People were shut down, lost their jobs, etc., forced out of all sorts of institutions. And now we're sort of becoming the party of defending free speech on the left. There is a slight hint of, I think that's irony and hypocrisy in there.
Yes, sir.
But we paid a price for that. I mean, we did at the ballot box. I mean, so, it's you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Sure.
He's a lawful permanent resident. He shouldn't be expelled for speech.
Well, but there's also, again, remember, if he came here illegally in the first place, that's a very different.
Well, he came on a student visa. It's not clear to me he came illegally.
Right, but did he overstay? I mean, my point is,
Yeah, I
those
understand,
facts
but
all matter. And if there's,
yeah.
and if you create, if you didn't do this by the book, then you've opened yourself up.
All right. By my count, we have one new hand raised. We want to get Jim Kennedy in. We need two more new people to raise your hands or the show's over. But while we give people who've never raised their hands a chance to do that, let's bring in David Bonson of the Bonson Group, sponsor of Two Way Tonight.
In New York City.
In
I like
Gotham City, and the author, of course, of Dividend Cafe. David, welcome in. Would love to just hear, if you would, your view of how the markets are dealing with the president's policies and the efforts of his spokespeople to tamp down the concern.
You know, the expression I think we're going to start hearing more of in the next few days is it's moved from being a Besant economy to a Lutnick economy. And I do not say that as a compliment. I really do think that there is an ideological divide, and the administration is doing a great job pretending there isn't. But I know Scott Bessent, and he does not believe some of the nonsense that is being said from the administration right now about the global trade order and the way economic productivity works. And Lutnick's comments over the weekend were just as damaging to market action yesterday as President Trump's non-denial of a recession with Maria. So this Lutnick-Bessent divide we saw play out when they were both sparring for the Treasury position in November. I think it's become an ideological divide, and it's a big deal. And you know how President Trump loves palace intrigue. I think it's more than just internal staff politics. There's a war right now over how an economy works. And I think Scott Bessent understands the answer to that a lot more than what I'm hearing out of Howard Lutnick.
Sean?
I'll pass.
Okay. Dan?
I mean, it's ironic because Lutnick's firm they're bond traders. You would think they would get it.
Well, they were not just bond traders, Dan. They were brilliant bond traders and currency traders. Yep. And what Howard did in the aftermath of 9/11 is one of the most historical, patriotic, and heroic things, not just, in the country and for his firm and his life, but I mean for financial markets. It was stunning. And yet there's just obviously an ideological divide. And I think that the other piece I want to say about markets, Mark made a really important comment earlier about the valuation level of markets. President Trump was told in 2018 over and over, look, markets haven't responded that negatively to tariffs. We have a lot of bandwidth here. That was always a Pete Navarro line. But what he didn't understand is that markets were trading at 17 times earnings. They were now starting off trading at 23 times earnings. He lost all that margin of error and then some. And you had a categorically different bond market. And most importantly, the economic vulnerability is totally different. So I think we're living in a totally different environment than we were. And the tariffs 5-6 years ago, at this point now 7 years ago, didn't really happen. It was $30 billion soaking wet. Right now, he's talking about something getting close to $300 billion.
David, one last question for you. Let's say the president said to you, David, I know that we've got both a policy problem and a perception problem. I want to fix them both today with the Business Roundtable. What would he say to fix both policy and perception?
I think on a perception level, he has to just go back to the supply side talking points, re-emphasize to the Steve Moores and Art Laffers of the world, who I'm 100% aligned with. You have got to get tax reform at the top of the priority. I think it is for President Trump behind the scenes, but he hasn't used his bully pulpit. And then everyone's talking about this, Mark, about extending the tax cuts. That's not going to cut it. No pun intended. It's not enough to simply say later in the year, we think we're going to extend the tax cuts that you already have now. He campaigned on more than that. So the messaging has to get back to tax cuts and deregulation and energy. But then the actual policy side, we have got to, you guys have done a great job today talking about clarity. They have no clarity on what they're trying to accomplish with trade. In 2018, it was easy. It was China's ripping us off. China's bad. We're going to do something about China. If somebody can tell me what the policy objective is with Canada right now, I would love to hear it, because I haven't heard it at all.
You've not heard. Wait. You've not heard what the policy objective is with Canada?
That is correct.
What is it? What industry is screwing us?
Hold on. So first of all, I'm anyway. With all due respect, he's been very clear. It's about the current set of tariffs are about fentanyl and border issues.
Okay,
And
well,
then
Sean, if
April
it's
2nd,
about fentanyl, then we're going to win real easily. No problem. Because
but
the amount of fentanyl
just to
coming
be
into
clear,
the
you said
Canadian
you haven't
border.
heard.
Hold on.
You
Go ahead,
haven't.
Sean.
I don't. Whether or not you agree or not is separate than you haven't heard. So you haven't heard that that's what the rationale was for the first group of tariffs.
But that's not really the rationale.
But
it's
it
the
isn't.
legal.
Yeah.
It's the legal reason.
Yeah, but Sean,
to do this.
Honestly, Dan, I actually think that I don't agree with Sean, even that we've heard that, because he said they're ripping us off.
Right.
And
exactly.
I want to know in what way they're ripping us off by selling us more than we sell them. That's nobody's definition of being ripped off.
Well, it depends on what the reciprocal tariff is. I mean,
Well, I don't know how much
there's
fentanyl
not
we
an
sell to
accurate-
Canada then.
That's right. And so if one believes the aluminum and lumber we're getting in from Canada is ripping us off, then we'll find out the hard way how untrue that is. But President Trump doesn't believe that. It's not true. It's absurd.
I agree.
All right, David, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. We're grateful to you for your sponsorship of the evening program, and we love having you on. Thank you.
I'm
Thanks,
a little
Mark.
seasick now. But
Everybody
otherwise, that
should
was
read
great.
Dividend Cafe if you don't already. All right, Charity, welcome in. Charity, am I right that you've never raised your hand before? Or have you?
I have before, so I am not new to your show, but thank you for having me on today.
All right, thank you for coming back. I thought you were not new, but I was told you were. Anyway, tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, please.
I am in Austin, Texas at the University of Austin. And I've been thinking a lot about the kind of Democrat speaking points. Congressman Ro Khanna was on your show last week, and Senator Slotkin gave the response to the State of the Union, or the not State of the Union address. And both of them made points about finding common ground that we can build on. And then they both take positions in the 10% on 90-10 issues. And so if a 90-10 issue isn't common ground, I'm not sure what is. It seems like spending in Ukraine is the most common ground thing. But if there are other common ground issues, I'd love to know what those are, because if they're taking 10% positions on 90-10, I don't think there's an actual interest in common ground. I'd love to hear your all thought on that.
Great question,
I think
Sean.
it's a talking point. I think it's a look, that's a political talking point. I'll find common ground. They haven't done, and I mean, look, I'll give that it goes both ways most of the time, but there's nothing that they've attempted to, and again, I don't know that they've done that much reach out to anyone, but that's just their way of trying to make it look like they'd be willing to. It's a reflexive political talking point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is and it isn't. I agree with Sean. You're always going to say that to try to kind of like take out some steam out of the kettle. I think there is not a lot of common ground today, unfortunately, on cultural issues. And those cultural issues today are more kind of 70-30, 80-20 issues for Republicans, where I think there could potentially be some common ground. And there was in the summer are things like immigration reform. Things like the economy. I think one of the reasons several Democrats will vote for the continuing resolution in the Senate is because they do want to point at home to some areas where they went along with the president, that they were not always fighting him. So I even think people like Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego may end up voting for this at the end of the day because they want to point to something. I think depending on what happens with this tax package and reconciliation, I think the final vote, not the one on the floor, not the just to kind of get out of committee, I think you could see some Democrats vote for this, depending on what's in it. I want to reserve.
To be honest,
the right.
though, the CR isn't exactly a place where, I mean, that's not. I mean, again, it's a talking point on both. I would give you that, but to say that because you funded the government at current levels, I don't think it's exactly a show of bipartisanship. I agree with you. It's a check the box, but
Charity, thanks for joining. Grateful to you. I want to check in on Fox because they're talking about the market's just open. So let's see what they're saying.
Chains, move them out of China, move into places like Vietnam. And you made the point that American companies are now making a new realignment to adjust to the changing scenario today. Why don't you go ahead and explain that and give us your measure of confidence as to when we get there and how?
Yeah, Bill, I think that companies today are doing a bit of a recalibration right now because they're recognizing that President Trump is serious about these tariffs and he's not going to change course. The Wall Street Journal has been criticizing the tariff plan for a long time, trying to warn the president, don't do it, don't do it. But President Trump is looking from 30,000 feet above. He expects a disruption. He said that the other day, sure, we'll have a disruption, but we're okay with that. And I asked him that in the interview as well, what other disruptions might he expect? I think it's largely companies and investors getting used to a new day, a new sheriff in town, and that includes ensuring that America comes first. So yes, we are talking about tariffs. And
Maria's from the Gasparino School. Everybody calm down.
Well, and it's ironic to watch her say it as the numbers on the right go down.
Ultimately, that cost
Although
is
right now they're
passed
starting
on
to
the
turn.
consumer. But President Trump's pushback on that is just
All right, we'll monitor that.
he
Charity,
is
thanks again for coming in. I'm gonna bring Jim
investments
Kennedy
into
in because
America.
we always
And
love
the-
to have him on, and he
Mark,
responded to my Go
Can
ahead.
I just add, as you bring in Jim, that one important difference between today versus 5 years ago or 5 or 6 years ago, and we referenced it a little before, but I think it's huge when you look at the polls. When Trump, the economy Trump inherited in the first term was a pretty sound economy. Things were pretty good. He put some of these tariffs in, he had all these exemptions for different industries. Today, we are coming out of 4 years of inflation where people are skittish. They don't feel very good. So any bump becomes much more personal and scary for the average American, whereas in 17 and 18, it was not very scary for people.
Yeah. I love everybody with their hands up, but none of you are new. If you don't raise your hand, if we get 3 new people, Jim Kennedy ends the program. Jim Kennedy is from the Clinton Murdoch wing of America. He's worked for both the Clintons and the Murdochs. Mr. Kennedy, welcome in.
Thanks.
What's on your mind, sir?
Just 2 things. With all the talk about the economy, it's a reminder that my party needs to stop being obsessed with Trump and just be obsessed with the economy, because the state of the economy a year from now is going to dictate if they win the House and the Senate next year. Trump is not on the ballot, and they need some Trump voters to win, so they need to stop the personal obsession. Bill Clinton didn't attack George Bush to win in '92. He attacked the issue of the economy. And the second issue my party needs to do a better job on is they need a religious awakening. They're too secular. They lost the Catholic vote. They need to kind of embrace that issue in a more fulsome and honest way, and they've abandoned it, and I think to their detriment politically. Again, I go back to Bill Clinton. He had a way of talking to evangelicals and Baptists and Catholics. It doesn't mean you have to be a proselytizer, but you just need to be more receptive and open about it. So those are the 2 issues I think the party needs to grapple with.
Jim, do you think someone on the second, both points great, you think someone on the second point, someone who's not a person of faith can still execute that?
I don't think so. I think you need to demonstrate some capacity and interest in it. For example, Josh Shapiro reminds me of my other old boss, Joe Lieberman, in the sense that, is a man of faith, which appeals to people of all faith. You don't have to be a particular faith.
Yeah.
You just be receptive to it and open about it.
I don't know. Of the senior Democrats, which ones are highly observant? Anybody know? I don't know. I've never
Well,
thought.
I mean, Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden go to mass every single weekend.
Yeah, but they're out of power.
actually
They're out
are.
of power. I'm talking about the ones in power now.
Yeah, not the best examples.
Well, I mean,
I'll be
on
kind
certain
if
issues,
Flint.
but not on others.
I mean, does Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, do they worship regularly? I don't know.
I mean, Chuck does, but I don't know about Hakeem. I'm sure he does.
Chuck's
the
pretty
problem is,
secular stylistically.
Yeah.
So I would say this. I agree with Jim wholeheartedly on point 1. I mean, that at the end of the day, that is the number 1 driver. I've always said there's 2 issues that drive people to polls. Number 1, your economic security. And it's not a number, it's a personal gut feeling. Do you feel that you're economically secure? What direction is that going? And your personal safety. Do you feel safe walking down the street? And it's not a crime statistic. It's, do you feel it? And that may not be down your street, but that may be, do you feel an attack is coming like it was in 2004 kind of thing. I think the problem, Jim, and I agree with you on both points, I just don't think you can do the second, because it's not, you can be a person of faith, but I think until they're willing to talk about the cultural aspects, how that impacts, that's the disconnect. If you just walk around and say, I go to church every week, I go to mass, I went to confession on Friday, but then you don't live that life, that's the problem. And so I actually agree with you. I just don't think, I think the party could execute number 1. But the problem with number 2 is that it comes back to this thing that we talk about all the time, the authenticity. And you look at these cringe videos that the Dems keep putting out of them dancing around. Shapiro now did one that came out either the last 24 hours sitting on a couch. It just doesn't look it looks weird. I showed it to my kids last night and they were I mean, it was just like, you don't look authentic. And so if you're going to walk around talking about your faith, but then you don't appear to live it, it's not authentic.
Well, I actually would split this a little bit. I'm not sure you have to live it as much as you have to respect it. I think where the Democratic Party gets in trouble is they don't respect a lot of people who are of faith, who for whom it's a big deal, right? It's like, what's the matter with you, right? We're a more modern society. You should be pro-choice. You should support trans. Like, we just don't respect people of faith. And that, I think, is what needs to change. And so I think you can be agnostic, but you just, if you respect people, you're willing to kind of go to where they are and listen to them and show them the respect. I think you can be successful.
And I agree, Dan. I think that's that's part of what I was like. To me, it's not, you can't just say it and be like, oh, I go to mass, I go to temple, that to me is you're trying, it's like a fake way of doing it. If you actually talk about it in the way that you are, which is I actually think you could, to Mark's point, I think you could be quasi, agnostic and be like, wow, I admire people who do this, or it's a respect for people who have that, who view that way of life and not demonizing it the way that it has come out. So, but I don't think they can do it. The base of the Democratic Party is not there. Whereas it is, I think, on the first, if you went out and focused on fighting for stronger economic policies that would help working men and women, that would resonate a lot more. Or it could, I think, maybe not would, but could. I think on the second one, I just don't think that the leaders of the Democratic Party are willing to take on basic things that would show that that's something that they actually kind of believe.
Jim, 2 ingenious points. We love having you on. Please come back. Thank you. Hey, Mike, are you trying to pass yourself off as someone who's new?
I am someone that's new.
Welcome in, sir. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Duncan, Oklahoma.
Thank you for setting a great example of raising your hand. Have you been a viewer for a long time?
Ever since two-way started.
All right. Was it only my browbeating that got you to raise your hand today?
Pretty much.
Okay. Follow Mike's example.
All right,
everyone.
it works.
He's been watching from the beginning, raised his hand today for the first time. We just need 2 more to not shut the program down. Welcome in. We love Oklahoma. Tell us what's on your mind, sir. And thank you for joining.
CNN came out with a deal that said in Biden's third year, there were 5,000 businesses that shut down. That was a record except for the COVID year. Last year is expected to be 6,100. It ended up being 7,000. Some of it was due to overexpansion. Some of it was due, of course, to insurance costs, cost of goods and services, and things like that. Do you think it will even be more this year? And what do both parties have to say what they need to do to help curtail that? Or is this an adjustment that sometimes lots of businesses go through?
Yep. A great question. Great question. I'll say a couple things preliminarily and then turn it over to my colleagues. First of all, we are still dealing with COVID aftermath, right? There's still lots of businesses of all size who, if you talk to them about payroll, about capital expenditures, about office space, they'll say we're still dealing with the fallout of COVID. And so I think all the numbers have to be seen in that light. Second is, this is a strange economy right now. The Biden economy was strange. The theory of the case of what Joe Biden believed needed to be done to grow the economy was not super clear, but it involved a lot of government spending. And we're dealing now with some of that being unwound, some of that's still in the pipeline, and a bigger role for government, which conservatives would say credit at the private sector investment that is required to sustain businesses. Third thing I'll say is, we know what President Trump's theory of the case on the economy is. It's one of his strengths, I think, as a communicator. Lower taxes, less regulation, energy production, distribution, and export, and now tariffs too. I think you see rising predictions of the odds that there'll be a recession by some of the Wall Street firms. And obviously, if there's a recession, you're going to see more businesses go out. They're not at 50%, but they're 20% and rising. So if I had to bet today, I would say you'll see numbers that are pretty big. I don't know if they'll be as big as they've been the last few years. Sean.
I mean, look, I think that to your point that the bottom line, and we'll see a little bit today. Let's see what his speech says at 5:00. The one thing, I mean, President Trump is super sensitive to jobs and to business creation. I mean, he understands this in a way that most politicians don't. I mean, he's lived it. He understands, between golf courses and hotels and restaurants, he gets what needs to happen. I do think that the question for me is, where's the pain point, right? He has telegraphed that he's willing to allow some disruption to occur. Is that disruption 3 weeks? Is that disruption 3 months? But I think that this is going to be really important because, he sees it every day in the stock market. And again, it goes up and down, so fair enough. But I think at some point, Mark flashed the poll numbers at the beginning, you're going to see this start to come through, not just in the polling, but in a lot of the analytics that the data analytics, as far as where those people are. I think the tariffs are a whole nother ball of wax as well. How many farmers does this affect? We were able to buy them off last time with some, different government funding and other programs, but those are his people. So I think you're absolutely right as far as this is critical right now. And how much of this disruption matters. This is where his team's going to be critical to him. The people we talk about all the time, the Bassett, the Lutnick, the Hassetts. It's like when you have a fever and the doctor tells you, hey, for 24 hours, it's going to be horrible. But then on the other side, you'll be okay, but you're going to have to go through this. How long does that fever last for us? And how much are we willing to put up with? That's going to be the thing. And how much does he want to tell us? The one last thing I'll just say is I thought about this the other day. When I'm on a plane, one of the most reassuring things that a pilot says, as far as I'm concerned, is when they tell you, hey, in about 3 minutes, we're going to experience some turbulence. I feel like, okay, that says to me the pilot knows what's happening. I shouldn't worry when the bumps come. It's when the bumps come and I wasn't told about it that I get worried. Like, didn't they see this? What's going on? Sometimes they don't care to tell you. Sometimes they do. But I feel like he's telegraphing it. So it's almost like, okay, they know what's happening. They know what's about to come. Is it just short-term turbulence or not? And I think that's going to be the difference. So tonight's speech, I think, is going to be important.
Dan.
Yeah, markets crave stability. You can plan. Like I remember even when Democrats, people didn't like what we were doing either under the Obama or Biden years, they'd say, okay, at least if I know the rules and I know what you're doing, then I can try to figure out how to profit and navigate this. He can say whatever he wants tonight, and the market could go up tomorrow, could go up for a week. The problem is two things. One, he likes to surprise you. He likes to kind of toss the red ball out, to put something on the table to get, Canada and Mexico, off balance and to project strength. And I keep coming back to this. He does not like to define victory in clear terms. Why? Because he may not be successful. And he always has to win. He always has to project strength. He accomplished it. It was easy. I fought and won for you. So he just constantly it's very, very obtuse what exactly he's trying to accomplish. And markets despise that. And anyway, that's not just Wall Street, Main Street. They just want to know, how is this going to work? What are the rules of the road? So, things were not great under Biden, but Trump is not helping himself. And this is a pure Trump play. And also I'll add, he did not run in 2024 on this notion that there's going to be short-term pain. He ran on the utter and complete opposite. So he's now telegraphing we're going to go through pain, but that is not what got him elected at all.
No, but that's, I agree, Dan. But one of the things that got him elected is saying business as usual is over. We're going to actually get things done. So if there's a realignment that has to happen and it's short lasting, I think people will tolerate that. The question becomes, politically, you got until, well, I would argue probably till, midsummer or so before people start panicking. There is something that has to happen. We all get it. I mean, I think the president is making the case on trade, why it's not fair. And I think that there are going to be some problems, and he's getting us better deals. You're seeing companies invest in the United States and talk about massive investments. As those come to fruition, that's going to make a big difference. So part of this is, if there's a little bit of disruption, but it benefits us long term, it'll work out.
But the problem is, Sean, half of the tariffs he's done, maybe even 3/4, have not been on the economy. It's been on fentanyl, the Panama Canal. Colombia wouldn't take immigrants. He's using tariffs for all these other things. The one place it's probably legit is China and maybe Mexico. In terms of, we need to try to have a rebalancing here.
Well, Europe too.
India, Europe, cars.
Okay, fair. You're right. You're right. But those are, China and Europe are big boys. They can put tariffs back on us.
And just to be clear, I'm against all tariffs. But
yeah, I know. But I mean, he's.
But if you're against all tariffs, then you should want theirs to come down.
But okay,
I do.
I mean, I'd like to be 6-4 too, but I'm not. So again, define what it is you want out of the China and European trade wars.
But see, this is where I think sometimes we get caught up in the tactics. Okay, I don't like it. Are we getting a better deal or not?
We don't know what the deal is, Sean. That's
who cares? But my point is, we're worried about the process. And the question is, are more people investing in America? Are companies coming back? Are jobs being created? And if the answer is yes, then why does it matter that it was a little messy?
Because, well, okay, then you're telling Main Street and Wall Street, don't worry about any of this. The back end, and we'll define when the back end is 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years.
You've already seen, wait, hold on.
But you haven't, Sean. You cherry pick one example of the positive, but you want to ignore all the screaming negative. So you can't, if you're going to do that,
no. I'm not
put it all out there.
Screaming. I'll take the screaming. But what I'm saying is that when Taiwan Semiconductors comes over and says $100 million, moving chips, which is good for our national security, but also for manufacturing and job creation. When Honda says we're moving the Civic from Mexico to Indiana, when SoftBank talks about $100 billion, when Apple talks about massive investments, those didn't just happen.
But Sean, let me take every one of your examples, and Mark, I know we need to go. Semiconductors, you're talking about canceling out $400 billion in semiconductor spending, which even Republicans in their district are saying,
government
don't do. Hold on.
Right.
Ford is saying we have a huge issue now with our suppliers.
I got to go to John McLaughlin quickly. All right. Hey, Mike, you set off a huge discussion that had nothing to do with your original question about business closures, but we're grateful for the question, and we're grateful to you for being a leader in raising your hand and setting a good example so the show's not canceled. Thank you. Come back. Yes, sir.
I was not hurt by asking my first question. Vinny and Guido are not at my door.
Yeah.
So
the water's warm. Come on in. We're grateful to you for raising your hand. Grateful to you for being part of the program all these months, and we welcome you back anytime.
You bet.
Thank you, sir. All right. Here's CNBC. I wanted to show Jim Cramer, but we just missed him. So
perfect setup.
We'll keep watching.
When it was up this morning,
you can take that down.
I was like dying.
But if Jim Cramer comes back,
you can hear him.
We'll do it. Again, thanks to Mike. Now, Caden, are you going to tell us? Are you here to tell us that you've never raised your hand before?
Never raised my hand.
Caden, welcome in. That's true. Caden, thank you for setting a great example like Mike. You're not from Oklahoma. Where are you from, Caden?
No, sir. Kind of everywhere. My dad was military, but right now I'm in the great state of Louisiana.
Oops, hold on. I took you off. Great state. Where are you in Louisiana?
Baton Rouge.
Nice.
Yeah. I muted you by accident. I'm doing all sorts of things wrong. I'm muted again. Caden, I like to pronounce it. Tell me if this is nuts. I like to pronounce it Baton Rouge. Is that all right? Got unmute again, sir. My fault.
Oh,
there you go.
That's pretty good. I like
Can I print that Baton? Sometimes when
Rouge.
I'm down there, that's how people say it. All right, welcome in, sir. Tell us what's on your mind, and thank you for joining. We just need one more new person to keep the show from being canceled.
Oh wait, is that Bill Outlaw? Is he new? I think he's saying yes.
Bill, you're new. Bill is new. All right, Bill. I thought you were on yesterday, but you had your hand up yesterday. All right, so we're almost home free, assuming Caden's question's not so long-winded. Caden, what's on your mind, sir?
So I've just been seeing all the stuff about we had all these court cases. I mean, some are from Sean and getting removed from the Navy board of directors. I think I forget exactly.
He's back on though,
but he is, and congratulations.
Thank you.
But my thing is that like we're getting all these cases about these tenured, supposedly nonpartisan positions, but is this going to lead to maybe like the Fed board of directors or something like that being able to be kicked off by the president, or you know, like what's that going to lead to? Because that could be a huge thing.
So there's different categories of jobs, right? There's some jobs where the president can clearly remove anybody he wants. There's some where, in theory, he can't. In some, he can if he waits a certain amount of time, and in some, it's unclear. So, and one thing he can do, all presidents can do, and this president's already done it, is pressure people to leave. So, like, he wanted the head of the FBI to go. He could fire him, but the guy quit because it was untenable to stay. I think that's, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, I think that's true of the Fed. In other words, he can remove people, right? He can remove people from the Fed at any time, but
Fed's a little, I thought the Fed was a little wishy-washy in the sense that it goes back to, like, the Fed chairman has a term. There's, I think, a clause for cause that you can use, but I think the current Fed chair had said he wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
So you get into a protracted legal battle, I would assume.
Yeah. But I think you can make it difficult for them to stay. You can ask them to leave, and then you can fire them and see what the courts say. And I think that's where the Fed is, but I'm pretty sure you can force people out just as a practical matter. Before you go, Caden, are you worried about that because you think it just sets a bad example of lack of independence for the Fed? Got to unmute again.
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, if Trump wants to go blaze of glory and just, like, you know, kick everything off, it's like at this point, all right, we'll see what happens. I was in high school during Trump's first term. I voted for him, but I mean, I'm just kind of like, you know, and I just think, you know, you have all these independent agencies that are under the executive branch, but they kind of exert this quasi independence. Seeing that all like finally go away, or is it just entrenched? But I think just getting the like the questions out of the room, like, oh, is it not? Just getting some finality and all this.
Yeah. I think the current president puts independence in air quotes. Independent agencies. Caden, thank you for coming on. Grateful to you. 2/3 of the way there. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the aptly named Bill Atlaw, Dickensian, ironic, everything. Mr. Atlaw, welcome in. Please unmute.
Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted. Thank you for joining, sir. Where are you calling us from today?
Just to further explain, I've tried to break through before, but you've never called on me. I've raised my hand, so
I was saving you. I was saving you for today, sir. I almost called on you last night, but we ran out of time.
Right.
I thought it might have been rude to our guest who was trying to convince us that crypto is not an outlaw industry to bring in Mr. Outlaw.
Yeah, well, I was going to make it an outlaw industry.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah, but listen, first off, thanks. I really appreciate what you guys have done. I've met each of you individually very briefly, and I really just appreciate all that you do, the conversations like no other place, the insights that you bring. Each of you is very much on top of your respective areas. I learn a lot about what's happening in the background and stuff. So with that said,
thank you for that. Grateful to you.
Well, Mark, I'm also a Bob Uecker fan and a Yogi Berra fan, and so I would throw out one of Yogi's say, you can observe a lot by watching, or you can have the future ain't what it used to be.
And I'd say two things about the tariffs. When you get to a fork in the road, take it, and it gets laid out there early.
Yeah, right. You got that one too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Having said that, at first I was going to try to break through on Ukraine, and I do have an observation there. I do think, and Sean, I know you have a different take on this, perhaps, but I do think Trump is coming off as being very unfair to Ukraine in that, and I have a lot of connections in the Ukrainian community because I tap into and write about that, and they're feeling very much almost like backstabbed. Now, I get what he's trying to do in the context of the nuances of dealing with Putin and bringing Putin to the table, but I can tell you that what I've seen and heard in the Ukrainian community and people who are listening and I saw a poll last night that indicated that actually the public actually felt that Trump was or that Zelensky actually did better in that infamous meeting from last Friday by a small margin. So, but having said all that, I understand, and I think Zelensky should take the minerals deal, but I do think that Trump ought to try to somehow show how is Russia making some concessions here. And secondly, I would just add to this mix, I think part of what's happening now is all of a sudden we got flooded with the zone, with everything coming out there all at once, including the tariffs, including Doge, including what's happening internationally, foreign affairs, the Mideast, Ukraine. It's all of a sudden kind of like, whoa, Nelly, let's slow this train down a little bit.
Yep. Bill, two great points. Thank you for both. Sean.
I don't want this to come off callous, but I was thinking a lot about what, the context of what Bill was saying the other day. And there's sometimes when people are going through a really nasty divorce and the lawyer says, I know this isn't fair. And I know, but I, here's what it's going to take to get to a resolution, and you've got kids involved. And I thought about it. And again, I don't mean to minimize the loss of life and destruction, but I think sometimes I understand where Zelensky's coming from, the destruction of his country, the killing that has happened. It's very painful and personal to him. I get that. At some point, though, somebody needs to say, I get that, but we need a deal. And this is what it's going to take to make that deal happen. And you may not be happy about it. I may not. And so you have to sometimes get somebody into a position to make peace. And it's not easy. It's very personal. And I get it. And I don't in any way want to take away from what he must feel like as the leader of a country that's dealt with that. But we have an obligation as well to stand up for our interests and getting peace in the world. And so, like I've said on the tariffs and on other stuff, let's look at what happens. I think we are, for the first time, you actually see an effort to get peace that we hadn't seen in 4 years. And I that to me is what I want to do. I want to get to a place where the war ends, where the destruction ends, when the killing ends. And I think that Donald Trump and his team, Marco Rubio, Mike Waltz, Steve Witkoff, and General Kellogg, are all striving for that goal. And you saw that there's already some talk about a potential meeting with Witkoff and Putin. This is what we're hoping for. So I'm looking at the big picture in the end state, not sometimes the short term process that takes us to get there.
Warn our affiliates, we're going to run a bit over today. Dan.
Yeah, just for brevity's sake here, Bill, I agree with both your points. Peace for peace sake is not good. A good peace for Ukraine is good. And I agree with you. Shock and awe cuts two ways.
Bill, thank you for joining. Grateful to you. Please come back regularly. We love. There you go. We love all the regular folks who come and to ask questions. We do nothing against you, but we do want to get new voices in. And Sam, that includes you. Love Sam. Thank you for coming. Sean, what do you have on tonight? I know.
Well, we screwed up last night. My bad. Yeah. Roger Stone is tonight. Caroline Levitt is tomorrow. I just can't keep my days straight anymore.
Okay, so tonight's Roger.
Tonight's Roger. Tomorrow's Caroline.
All right.
It's Friday.
All right. Tonight here, doubleheader in the evening, 6 o'clock regular time, two-way tonight. I'll be live from the Olive Tree Cafe, and then an hour after that program ends, 8 Eastern time, you can watch on the two-way platform only, not on YouTube, the premiere of a new show here that we're super excited about called Table 17. We have the graphic. Here we go. Our lineup, our new colleague at Two-Way, Michael Moynihan, the owner of both the Comedy Cellar, above which the Olive Cafe sits, Noam Dworman, Bob Kerrey, former governor, senator, and a resident of Greenwich Village, and Sherrod Small, brilliant comic, and my personal favorite, the Olive Tree Cafe, Mad Men. They are the tightest band I've ever heard. They're incredible. You can go on social and hear their work. But there'll be some music, there'll be some comedy. Bob Kerrey will regale us. You can only watch tonight live on Two-Way. So go to twoway.tv/table17 to get the link so you can join and watch us stream live tonight, 8 Eastern time. Some of you, including Professor, are going to be there in person. Very few.
Mark, what is your go-to meal at Olive Tree Cafe?
I like all the food there. If I'm thin, if I'm down 30 from where I am now, the nachos. Ooh. If I'm not, the Olive Tree Cafe salad with grilled chicken. The hummus is excellent. I had about 100 carrots there yesterday because carrots are filled with sugar, but I can pretend they're not. And they make a mean Negroni. But the whole menu is great. It's a fantastic restaurant. And again, it's right above the Comedy Cellar. You can walk down the back steps and be in the Comedy Cellar. And the only bathroom in the Olive Tree Cafe is the Comedy Cellar bathroom. So if you want to go to the bathroom while you're at the Olive Tree Cafe, you have to walk through the Comedy Act. Which again, as Sean suggested, you get a little free comedy. Anyway, we'll see you tonight at 6, and then again tonight at 8 on the two-way platform. And then the three of us will be back here tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel, 9 Eastern time for the morning meeting, where once again, I will threaten to cancel the program if we don't get 3 new people raising their hands. So follow the example of Bill Outlaw and others. Show pride. And Bill will come back tomorrow and prove that he lived. He was not murdered by assassins because he raised his hand and spoke on the platform. Gentlemen, thank you for everything. See everybody tomorrow. Have a great day and see you at 6 tonight.